my face come up here. And I'm like, geez, this time I'm sorry I don't have no belt or nothing or anything to give, no prizes, but hopefully this is impactful for you all. So I want to set the scene. Think about high school. How many people loved high school? All right. How many people dreaded high school, you know? Think about that experience going into the lunchroom, right? Who did you sit with? You know, did you sit at the table with the jocks? Did you sit at the golf table, right? The cliques, all the different things, right? What does that feeling bring up, right, for you? I'm gonna set a little scene. You know, so in that high school experience, I was that black, neurodivergent, nerdy kid that could sit with everyone, talk to everybody, and I thought, that really doesn't really much change, right? Shakespeare likes to say all the world's a stage and we're all merely players, but I like to say all the world is just one big high school. And we're all masking insecurities and trying to be cooler than we are and trying to fit in. Think about that, all right? And I thought about, you know, essentially I added this later on about the parts of belonging, and I went back to my high school self. And one of the most impactful classes for me was a 10th grade leadership class by Mark Holbrook. And what he did in that 10th grade leadership class is he went down the roster and in our football practice, and he said, okay, I'm gonna sign you up. We're gonna do this Advent leadership class. And what it was an all black male class for all black male students that were 9th and 10th graders. And that was the most impactful class for my experience. And I thought about that, and I talked to, you know, we had my best friend, the father-in-law, the godfather of my children came out of that class, my lifelong relationships. And I thought that, in its essence, is really starting me on this journey about belonging. Because I like to say that the need for belonging does not stop when we graduate high school. The need for belonging doesn't stop when we graduate college. The need for belonging doesn't stop when we join associations like Eastern EACE or Start to Work. The yearning for belonging is lifelong. And so with that, I think that hopefully what I have to share would resonate not just with your own salient identities, but also think about that high school self. How could you help that high school self feel like they belong? And what can you do to heal that person now for those that felt like they always were on the outs? So why does it matter, or who am I? My name is Philip Wilkerson, as it said. I'm the unofficial mayor of Mason. There was no elections, I just made that up. I'm a father of two, a husband, and I'm also currently a doctoral student at George Mason, getting my PhD in communications. And one of my central core themes in research is about the power of belonging. I'm starting with my group right now. I have a documentary on the power of belonging, so if anyone is interested, I can send the link to you. It's unlisted on YouTube, but I'm happy to share the link of that. And I'm gonna share a little bit of research that I've done so far and bring it and correlate to why that need for belonging does not stop. And so you'll see right here, I have a mixed method study. I did a quadric survey, and so 107 of my respondents were black male faculty and staff at George Mason. I also did, you know, the documentary, I also interviewed them. And so these themes are coming out that will relate to all groups. I also like to say that my studies is rooted in African diaspora proverbs, Ubuntu. Has anyone heard of Ubuntu? Which is, I am because we are, right? And so that is talking about the power of belonging, the power of community, and that sense of identity and self. And it's also centered in Afrocentric frameworks, meaning in the experience of the black male experience, centralizing the narrative of blackness in that as a way to feel like you belong. And then I'm a big nerd on W.E.B. Du Bois, or Dr. E.B. Du Bois, and her brother, I gotta show that at a frat, W.E.B. Du Bois, and his work on dual consciousness, which for those that don't know, it's about how do we navigate spaces with this dual identity. Navigating spaces wants to belong and having the taxation and weight of trying to navigate two identities concurrently. And I will say this work and framework and belonging and dual consciousness is not only for the Black experience. Think about a lot of other spaces where you have a dual identity, whether you're in the LGBTQ community or the neurodivergent, we all wear masks, and that taxation, right? Think about wearing that weight. And this is where it's gonna be rooted, where you have, I like to call, spaces of reprieve to take that weight off for a little bit, to be yourself. And so that's where my research is grounded in. I've still got a long way to go. Don't ask me when I'm gonna finish. You know, God's got a plan for that. But I'm gonna work on it. I'm gonna get there one day. But I think, you know, essentially, this is work that's really important to me because it's tied to my identity. And I think it's work that could be applicable to not just Black men in higher ed, but the world in general, because we all have a need to belonging. As I think we see this running theme, our keynote speaker yesterday spoke about it, right? And so these themes are gonna come up. Like, I like to say, when I do these studies, and some of this stuff seems like, you know, it's not rocket science, we come at it from a theoretical research lens, but in the human, if we really break it down, these are concepts that we can all identify with. We all want to belong, right? So in my survey, and the quadrics, this is mainly the quadrics part. I did not code all the interviews. Like I said, I'm working, I'm taking my time. But in my survey, 83% of my survey respondents said that the mission of George Mason University aligns with their values. Think about that. Highly motivated, the mission, they feel like they're in spaces that they belong because they believe that the structure and system identifies or aligns with their values. Like, one of our values at Mason is we thrive together. They think that the structures and system in place, they're actually living to their contract, right? They are actually building places where we thrive together. Diversity is our strength. There's spaces where people feel that we are adhering to that. I created a Black male faculty and staff group that is in mission with diversity is our strength and we thrive together, right? So there's programs and initiatives at our university that aligns. And so 83 people say, yeah, you know, where I work actually rocks with what I do. 60% of them say that peer relationships keep them in their roles. So think about that. People quit toxic environments. They don't necessarily quit jobs all the time, right? And so relationships matter, belonging matters. People will say, you know, there's other studies, Gallup says that over 63% of job satisfaction is built on your direct relationship with your supervisor, right? So while we can talk about the system at whole, we also understand that in the micro, small grouping and community matters, and that peer-to-peer lateral. So I also say that too, that this is not also the burden of leaders in our office. We have a responsibility peer-to-peer level to create that, right? And that gives agency. It's not just, top down. We're all in a 360 model responsible for belonging in our spaces. And then 42% cited that financial was their main barrier. And then, you know, other one, I think lower, but they said lack of representation. So we can't, you know, that's a universal. We all broke, right? But universally, right? These are all things that are barriers. And so I'm gonna tail into how belonging is a structural, not say antidote, I guess an antidote because it still gives you, you know, like a medicine, but you know, you can't just take medicine, you have to do other things, right? You think about that, right? It's a prescription you have to still do the work, right? So I like to call them the 3 R's: recruitment, retention, and resilience. These are the benefits of belonging. I'm gonna be super simple about this part and then go into concrete examples, but you know, think about that table. When you have a good time and you belong somewhere, what do? You tell other people to join you, right? You bring people. So I would say the greatest recruitment tool is create spaces of belonging because people will bring other people. Show of hands, how many people came to Eastern EACE because someone else they trusted referred them? Boom. And what was their main tagline in referring? Oh, you'll like it here. There's space, you know. I like going. I belong here. So that is one of your greatest recruitment tools. And so thinking about that, that's something I also found out of my survey is for black men put other black men on into spaces, right? So that is why that's one of my central focuses of belonging. Retention. How many think about this, right? The greatest tool to keep people is to make them feel like they are heard, seen, valued, right? That is a great recruitment tool. So when someone belongs, they stay there. They will, put up with certain things. They will collectivize because they feel like they belong. And so think about that. We think about the tribalism, and we talked about, I love Chris was talking about this stuff, but we will put up with a lot, and we will be retained because we feel like we belong, we have a community. And think about this also, we also talk about the cost of retraining, the cost of re-engaging people. It costs more to do that rather than invest in the people that you have, right? And so belonging is a way to do that. And then resilience. Now, will I say belonging is going to cure the ills of racism in the world? No. Will being in a space of all black men help me with the day-to-day microaggressions? No. But when I know that I have a group to have my back, I am more resilient. I like to think of it as that meme. You see that dog and the house is on fire, and he says, "This is fine." I think that's what resilience is for me, right? It does not, belonging is, as I said, it's not the end-all solution. It's a prescription, but there's still systemically things that we can do. But when you belong, you can be a little bit stronger. We are stronger together. And so having that space, that reprieve, will allow you to be more resilient, to face the adversity. I like to use just a common thing. We did not have a lot of turnover within my office during COVID, a global pandemic, because of community and belonging. A lot of people made it through a very tough global time because the sense of I have a purpose in my office, in my unit. So belonging is a great antidote to systemic issues and builds up resiliency. So I wasn't going to take up a lot. I just wanted to reframe. Think about the day-to-day experiences that you have. Think about that high school self. As I said earlier, I don't think I really changed from that nerdy black kid that can talk to everybody and sit anywhere. I wasn't the star quarterback, I probably warmed the bench. But point is, I think those core roots is I always wanted to belong. I always had a table to sit at. I never worried about that sense of belonging in high school because of that. And I've yearned throughout my life, if there were not spaces for me, I made spaces. And that is something that's carried through. And I mean that to say, that is the agency that we all have. If there's not a seat at the table for you, they always say, pull up a table, a chair, whatever. But I'm like, sometimes it's like, what if you didn't want that table? Bring your own table and bring your own chairs and do the bat signal, and your people will come to you. So don't put the onus on belonging on others. That's my main thing with agency. We are all responsible for creating spaces of belonging for each other. I like to also think the one funny thing is that when I I stayed in touch with that same teacher, Mark Holbrook. And we both got inducted in the Fairfax County Public Schools Hall of Fame. And he was there with me, and it was an honorable, mentor, mentee, and the connections. He was a Mount Vernon alum. So this was his way of giving back to a high school that he went to. And I think about that, and he was like, Phil, when I did this class for black men, we had like De La Soul posters and all these things on the wall. He was like, I thought, we were talking about black power and all this stuff. He's like, I told you can be anything you want. I thought y'all would be CEOs and doctors and lawyers, and all y'all became educators, broke educators like me. And I said, Holbrook, the other part about this is that we created spaces and we became who we saw. So it's your fault that we're broke. So think about that in a sense that the spaces we create is also just great models for others. So if we really want to pour into our students, our new talent, as employers, into our new generation, we can model that too with belonging. Because if we want to create the generation behind us to be a better generation, then how are we making sure that they see concrete examples of belonging in action? And so, as I end, I don't have no championship belt, but I also just want to say, I am because we are. I am who I am because of Eastern ACE. I am who I am because of my community. I am, but you know that. And so you always have a seat at my table. I talk a lot though, so that's. But I'll make sure to always have a seat for you, and please pull up the chair and make a seat for someone else. Thank you.